Good morning, everybody. We're going to get started. Good morning. Thank you all so much for coming here. What a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day today to fight for the future of NYCHA. I'm Jessica Katz. I'm the city's Chief Housing Officer, and I'm so excited to be here with our residents and our partners to send a clear message. It's time to pass the NYCHA Preservation Trust now.
Yes! Yes! Pass that bill!
We cannot wait and hope for a windfall of billions of dollars that has been promised for decades without coming. Our neighbors who live in NYCHA buildings have waited long enough, and they deserve better.
Yes, we do. Indeed.
The trust will bring the money, the repairs, and the rights that every New Yorker's home should have. And even more, this legislation guarantees that these apartments will remain permanently affordable for future generations.
That's right. We support the trust.
It is on us to fight for that future, and the trust is how we will get there. Albany has the opportunity to deliver the biggest windfall to NYCHA residents since it was created 85 years ago. And this is about the residents, which is why today I am excited to hand it over to one of the many resident advocates who tirelessly fights for her tenants, Barbara McFadden, the TA of Nostrand Houses.
Thank you. Yes. We can do better. We can do better than that. Okay. We can do better Brooklyn and Manhattan. All right, now it's been a long time, and we support the trust. Okay. Good morning, Mayor Adams and my fellow New Yorkers. Today is a glorious day. With that being said, my name is Barbara McFadden, CCOP Chair for Brooklyn South and Resident Leader for Sheepshead Bay Nostrand Housing. Mayor Adams, I'm glad I have the equal opportunity to stand side by side with you, one of my greatest mentors who always inspired me to do my best. I remember in the early 90s when you were a police officer, you saved my brother's life. Furthermore, Mayor Adams, I do believe that this New York City Public Housing Trust is the best option in moving forward. Come on now, come on. Come on now, it's a glorious day. The legislation would allow NYCHA to get the federal resources that all my residents deserve. Mayor, I'm a voice for all the residents in New York City Housing Authority. I'm very confident that Public Housing Trust is an opportunity to create a new start, or shall I say a new change in New York City housing. Come on now. I came far, and I'm not leaving without that bill. If residents in the city of New York, if we have the necessary support from legislation and our governor, we urge all elected officials to support Public Housing Trust. Together, we can create a far-reaching, permanent improvement that directly impact public housing residents. And finally, we can improve all conditions in New York City housing. So today, I'm asking everyone to stand with me on the trust. Brooklyn, we are here. Mayor Adams, I'm asking you to support us on the trust. Thank you, everyone. All right.
Thank you so much, Ms. McFadden. We really appreciate your passion and your leadership and your willingness to fight for the future of your tenants. When we envisioned the Public Housing Trust, we wanted to make sure to absolutely protect the tenant rights that everybody in NYCHA currently enjoys under public housing in Section 9. So we really made sure that the bill encoded those rights within the bill itself. But you don't have to take my word for it. I want to introduce from the Legal Aid Society, Adrian Holder, to speak a little bit about their vision for the trust.
It is a glorious day, and I'm so happy that I am able to join with all of you all here today. It is the New York City Public Housing Preservation Trust. It's about preserving some of the most important, most impactful housing we have here in New York City. Not only does it house some of our most valued and committed residents who helped to make this city great, but public housing has been proven in stabilizing those households so that it's good health care, it is good education policy, it is good employment policy. We need to preserve our public housing, and the Preservation Trust will do that. It is obscene and demoralizing to have $40 billion, $40 billion of needed capital repairs to this vital housing stock. Would not have been permissible in any other circumstances, except we saw an extreme divestment of the federal and the state government. And it is important that now the state do the right thing and pass this trust and keep public housing public. Public housing needs to remain public, and it needs to have a voice with the residents taking the lead. And I'm so pleased and honored to have so many of you all here with us today. So it is about getting this done at the state level. Can we hear? We want the housing, public housing preservation trust here to be passed. This is the moment. To do otherwise is just to make a decision that we are going to allow the loss of this vital and important housing stock for New York. Thank you so much for having me here, and I look forward to speaking with everyone and continuing to work together, all of us, on getting this to happen. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Next, trust the trust. Next up, we have Community Service Society, who's one of the most dedicated organizations supporting NYCHA, and I'm proud to welcome CSS's Emerita Torres.
Thanks so much. Trust the trust. Trust the trust. It's great to be here. I represent the Community Service Society of New York, where for 175 years, we've been working to power a more equitable city and state that includes for NYCHA residents. We have advocated for decades for better living conditions, for better policies, and for public housing residents, all of you today, to have a role at the decision-making table, for you to have a voice. And that's what this trust is about. This includes that fight. What we see today in public housing is deplorable. I don't have to say that it's a critical time, because it's always been a critical time. It's always been critical. My grandmother helped raise me in public housing. This is personal for me. My father still lives in public housing in Soundview. So I come here with a policy perspective, but I also come here with it's personal. It's very personal. The NYCHA Preservation Trust is the solution. It represents a comprehensive strategy for the preservation of public housing. This will assure the future of NYCHA and all of you, all of its residents, even if Washington doesn't come to the rescue, and we don't think it will. I have serious doubts. It has the potential to address the full $40 billion capital backlog and restore decent conditions at every development, while keeping our public housing public and empowering residents by giving all of you an unprecedented voice in decision-making when it comes to what developments go through the process, which ones don't, how the process moves forward. You will have a decision-making role in that process, and that is critical. With the mayor and the state and everyone here, I want to say loudly and proudly, the Community Service Society supports the trust. We are behind you, and we're going to do everything we can to see it succeed. Thank you.
Trust the trust. Trust the trust. Trust the trust. Trust the trust. Trust the trust.
So next, we have the honor of hearing from Bishop Taylor from Urban Upbound, who has worked with NYCHA residents for years. Bishop Taylor.
Thank you so much, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I want to thank all of you for joining us on today as we amplify this very auspicious time that so many people have worked so hard to bring us to. Glad to see so many of our legislators here, my good friend Brad Lander, and all of the people that make the things that we need in our communities possible. I want to applaud Chair Russ, the executive team, Mayor Adams, and all the many advocates of the trust, especially those who work tirelessly to explain its purpose and its extraordinary benefits to the residents of public housing. The preservation of public housing should be the public objective number one. Public objective number one. The trust will create this vehicle, a vehicle that can drive this objective to success. This is a great day for residents of public housing. I want to thank the mayor for his promise not to forget public housing. His presence here today puts an exclamation point on his ongoing commitment to make public housing a place where people can call home and feel good about it. I'm standing here today because I have a PhD, and people often ask me, where did you get your PhD? What was your body of concentration, your body of work, Marcia? And I tell them I have a public housing degree. And I grew up in Queensbridge houses, and I'm a proud public housing resident. And I'm proud to say that we built an organization not from the outside in, but from the inside out, not from the top down, but from the bottom up. And over 20 years ago, I worked with Brad Lander and the Pratt Institute of Community Development, and here it is now 20 years later, Urban Upbound is breaking cycles of poverty across the city of New York. And so I'm standing with the trust on today. I'm standing with those that trust the trust, and I'm trusting the process that this will be a vehicle that can help us meet our objective of preserving public housing in New York City. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Bishop Taylor. The NYCHA needs $40 billion in investment. And we've been promised that from Washington year after year and decade after decade. And it's time, honestly, to take matters into our own hands and make some decisions. There is no silver bullet for NYCHA, but this is as close as we're going to get. The Public Housing Trust provides the resources, the procurement relief, and the resident rights, and the resident decision-making to opt into the trust as you see fit. So we're really optimistic that this is going to put NYCHA on a new track moving forward. My next speaker that I want to introduce is a housing wonk turned elected official. So we're really excited to have folks from the advocacy community come into practical leadership, and it's lovely to see a housing nerd in the halls of government with me.
Thank you so much, Jessica. It really is an honor to be here with some other housing nerds. It's an honor to be with many amazing advocates. Thank you to my friends from Legal Aid Society and Community Service Society and Urban Upbound. Most important, it's an honor to be here with Ms. McFadden and this amazing set of public housing resident leaders. I'm going to get to trust in just a minute, but I want to start with the following point. We cannot wait any longer to do right by our neighbors in public housing and by the buildings of the New York City Housing Authority. We just can't wait anymore, and that's for a few different reasons. I mean, it hasn't been right for a long time to leave our neighbors in the conditions that they have been in for years. We got a lot of folks here who live it, and I see a lot of reporters who I know have themselves been inside with some of these folks, inside the buildings, but most New Yorkers don't go inside public housing. I mean, it's by itself would be one of the largest cities in America, so we got a lot of our neighbors there, 1 in 16 New Yorkers, so it's a lot of folks, but most of the other New Yorkers aren't inside public housing, so they don't see conditions that they just would not tolerate for their neighbors, for other New Yorkers, for people whose families have every much right as yours and mine to live in solid living conditions. And in this case, it is the city that promised those living conditions in partnership with the federal government and has failed for years, for decades, to deliver on the basic promise of a decent place to live. So it is way past time. But there's other reasons why we just can't wait any longer. One is that in so many cases, the buildings themselves are beginning to be in jeopardy. Right? So it's not only that we're leaving people in appalling conditions, it's that if we don't fix the roofs and fix the systems and modernize the buildings, there will come a time, and it will not be that long from now, when the buildings themselves simply cannot be saved and renovated. And if we get past that point, we will be in an impossible situation with 500,000 of our fellow New Yorkers. We can't wait any longer. Third, sadly, the federal government has shown itself unable to deliver on the resources that are necessary. I wish that were not the case. I fought so hard for Build Back Better. I fought so hard for a federal government that could deliver. I will keep fighting, but we can't wait for it because it is just not on the horizon. As much as we're going to keep working for it, as much as we might wish it, it is not that close, and we can't wait for the federal government. And that means we have to act now in Albany, and that's why it's great to have our Mayor, Eric Adams, prioritizing the NYCHA Preservation Trust, because with this united group, we can get the NYCHA Preservation Trust legislation passed in Albany this session before the session expires and moves forward. Now that the mayor's here, it won't take too much longer, but I do just want to say this because, you know, trust is hard to come by. It gets lost and compromised pretty easily. So I sure understand why NYCHA residents don't have a lot of trust, why they're skeptical when leaders say we got a new solution, why they're anxious about a whole lot of things, including this. And I don't blame anybody. I'm with the folks who trust the trust, but I just want to say I don't blame anybody who doesn't. You know, trust has been burned, and it's hard to get back. But that's why this legislation is so good, and it's important to get down into the details. This keeps public housing public. It preserves tenant rights, and it is the most significant legislation I have ever seen for giving resident leadership, resident involvement in choice and decision-making about the future. And for those of you that haven't followed this step by step, the most significant set of changes that have been made to this legislation are to say resident voice is first and foremost. Developments will only go into the trust if their residents choose it. And that is a profound and important step that really strengthened the Preservation Trust, and is what took me across the finish line from somebody who was supportive, but not coming out there and saying, let's get it done, to someone who's saying, we must do it right now. The legislation needs to pass in Albany. The things that could give us that trust are strengthened. There's a role for oversight by residents. The Comptroller's Office will actually have power to audit the trust, just like we do NYCHA. We commit to do that together with residents. We'll have an audit committee of resident leaders to help make sure, and that is why I believe we cannot wait any longer. The trust-building measures that are in this legislation are clear. It is time to pass the NYCHA Preservation Trust and bring renovations to tens of thousands of units and our fellow New Yorkers. Thank you, Mayor, for leading on this. Thank you to Jessica for building our team on it. Let's get it done.
Thank you so much, Brad. So in the process of crisscrossing the city, speaking to public housing residents, I'm always struck by how much time you all devote to just the bare basics of upkeep of your housing. I really want to thank you all for coming here today and taking your sunny morning that you could have been doing anything and coming here and advocating for this, and also for all the other expertise that you share. You've all had to become experts in property management, in plumbing problems, in asbestos abatement, and I just want to create a piece of legislation that delivers for NYCHA residents, that lets you go live your lives and not have to be experts on every little detail of the way that your buildings are operated. So I want to thank you for all the tireless volunteer hours that you all put in. And that's why we really wanted to make sure that those strong resident voices were incorporated into the trust, and that resident decision-making was baked into the very legislation right from the beginning. And a wonderful example of our tenant leaders who are going to help get this across the finish line is our next speaker, Wrangell Houses TA President Bernadette McNear.
Oh my God. Trust the trust. We got our mayor backing us.
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome, Honorable Mayor Adams.
Right.
Distinguished guests, and most of all, NYCHA stakeholders, you, the residents.
Okay.
Welcome to Uptown Harlem. My name is Bernadette McNear, and I'm a resident association president of the Wrangell Houses, right there.
Here we go.
Wrangell Houses and Polo Grounds Towers is a home to more than 7,000 residents. I have been a NYCHA resident for approximately 50 years. I have been in NYCHA, I'm sorry, I'm just nervous. I have been a NYCHA resident for approximately 50 years. Over the course of these years, I have seen many issues that have affected the quality of life for those living in the development. The complaints from residents have now transitioned to voices of despair. All we want is a decent place to live and call home.
Amen.
There have been shouting matches, marches, all in efforts to getting someone to hear and acknowledge our plight. Over the course of years, New York City administrations have changed and NYCHA properties have worsened. We need action. Mayor Adams is that someone. He not only hears and sees NYCHA problems, but he is also a mayor that is solution-driven. We say yes to the trust. These funds will help make our homes livable. We believe help has finally arrived. Thank you. Yeah. Mayor Adams, I look forward to the day that we as NYCHA residents can stop complaining and start enjoying our homes.
Come on now.
More importantly, the following generations will have an opportunity to have a home that is clean, safe, and without hazards.
All right.
So without further delay, let me introduce to you our friend, the mayor, the Honorable Eric Adams. Welcome, sir.
Thank you,
Lovely.
Mayor.
Doesn't have to be long. Doesn't have to trust the trust.
Yes,
You know,
Mayor.
let me get that T-shirt.
Mayor, we need you.
And to all of you, Bishop Taylor, in the years out in Queens, Brookline, here in Harlem, the large numbers of housing residents, a city within a city. And this doesn't have to be long, and I'm not going to be long. You know, when you talk about living in NYCHA, holding down our city for so many years, you're looking at, you know, 50-plus years, 40-plus years, 35 years, and there's only one thing that has been consistent. Everyone tried to just be philosophical while people were living in a destructive environment. And as I walk through, not only campaigning, but my days as borough president, as state senator, looking at all of these bills coming to Albany, everyone is stating year after year after year on the campaign trail of what we ought to do, what we need to do, but no one was doing. No one was doing. So we went to the residents and asked. Some of the residents said, hey, we want this model. Then let's do that, as we saw in Brooklyn last week. Other residents said, we want this model, the trust. So why can't they have a menu of items that they would like to see on their facility? Why can't they have their options? And so we shouldn't take these options off the table. Let them decide what options they want to use. One thing that's clear, we need to stop playing with this. We're not getting money from the federal government this year. They're not. They already told us we are not concerned with NYCHA residents. They did not pass that $35 billion that we needed. So we must do it on our own. Here's a way to do it. The trust. Let's get the trust passed. And I want to thank our colleagues in Albany. There are those in Albany who support this. They believe it's the right thing to do. Now let's get it over the finish line so we can finally stop the years of neglect with NYCHA and keep kicking the can down the road. You heard me say over and over again that all of these problems that we're facing in our city, there are many rivers that feed the dysfunctionality that we have in our cities. We need to dam each one, but this time we have a real stream of resources that can come through the trust. Let's make this happen. And here's 3 reasons, as Brad stated, that I'm 100% on board. Number 1, you can vote in and out. If you don't want it, then don't do it. Don't do it. You know, there's nothing better than options. Number 2, participating in the vendor selection. You're participating in the vendor selection. You know, far too often you have no say-so in these vendors who come in, do shoddy work, and then they're able to continue to go from one facility to the next facility. They have been eating off of the dysfunctionality of NYCHA. Now you participate. 3, serve on quality assurance committees to look at the repairs, to make sure the repairs that they are stating were done are actually done. Now, when you add that into what we're going to roll out, a real dashboard, my chief technology officer is putting together a real dashboard so they can see in real time what is happening. They should be signing off, tenants should be signing off on tickets. They should say, yes, I agree that the job was done. We're going to align the repairs so that you will have one person that will align if the carpenter, if the painter, if the plumber should come in. You shouldn't have to be home over and over again to get people coming in a disjointed system. This is so disjointed. And so, listen, all I can tell you is that I heard you. And I know we can do a better job. Because if you were living in a luxury condominium somewhere, you wouldn't have these conditions. And I'll never forget this one story when I was a lieutenant in Brooklyn, in 88 Precinct. We went into one of the houses, and I had a rookie officer that I was training. And we were responding to a job in one of the facilities, and there was urine in the elevator. And the rookie cop said, you see this, lieutenants, you see this urine? These people don't deserve anything. This is what they do. And I said to him, listen, one person pissed in that elevator. One person. One person. And the people who live in this building are just as upset as everyone else. But if you judge the entire residents of these buildings based on the action of one person, then you demonize, and you're not going to give them the professionalism that you're supposed to give them. So instead of you complaining about that one person that pissed in the elevator, get a piece of paper and wipe it up and show that you're concerned about the tenants that live here. So let's not judge NYCHA by the numerical minority that don't understand. And many people who are abusive in your housing don't even come from your housing. They don't even come. So when the police respond and treat you like the person who urinated in the elevator, when the carpenter respond and treat you like the person that urinated in the elevator, when the painter respond and treat you as the person that lives in the elevator, when elected officials treat you like the people who pissed in the elevator, then you get a response from people who don't respect the overwhelming number of NYCHA residents, but they treat you like the person who did something that was inappropriate. As your mayor, I'm treating you as the people who have held down this city for years and not like the person who did something wrong. That is where we are at right now. So, ignore all the noise. Ignore all the distractions. We've heard it all before. You have a mayor that has your back, and we're going to get this done. Let's get this done. GSD, get stuff done. Thank you.
Come on. Wonderful, wonderful. Yes,
Take on top is why I do my photos.
Can I sneak in here? Mayor, can I sneak in here?
Yes, you can.
I'm in the first statement. I want to picture with the mayor. This is just me and the mayor discussing.
Got the best man that put these out.
The best mayor. Yes.
That's right.
Trust the trust. Trust the trust. Trust the trust. Trust the trust. Trust the trust.
Yes. Yes.
Come on.
There you go, brother. There you go, sister. don't sound that.
Mayor Harris is gonna run New York.
But you had been skeptical of Brad during the campaign. We're 2 weeks away from the end of the legislative session, and you're just having this rally to endorse the trust. How likely is the legislature actually going to approve the trust, given some have criticized your strategy in Albany thus far into your mayoralty? And what is the delay? Why did it take you so long, perhaps, to get on board with the trust?
A couple of things. One, it's not only the process, RAD, trust, it's who's doing it. Because you could have a great system, but if you have the wrong people implementing it, then you have a bad system. And so it's about what I've always stated, no matter what it is, give the residents the options. I'm clear on that. Give the residents the option. Now, people criticize our strategy in Albany. I was a former state senator. So we were successful in earning income tax credit, successful in the child care, successful in doing what was the impossible by many people of getting crime issues placed. Do we want more? Yes, but we were able to move the needle what people said was impossible. We had a successful record in Albany, yet people said we didn't have the right strategy. I always thought good strategies mean you get wins. I got wins. And I know Albany. The last week is when stuff gets done up there. And we're at the point now where people have deliberated, and now they're looking at these these last few items, including mayoral accountability. So you can say that we haven't been up there. We've met with over 100 lawmakers. We had a great strategy because I know how to process and navigate the complexities of Albany, and my team did a great job.
I'm just going to jump in on this real quickly to add first, I think it's important to note that the changes that empower residents and give them real choice in the trust are very recent. They were amendments made as the bill was moving through the assembly committees, and they're quite recent. So just for myself, I'm much more ready to come out publicly and say we got to have it because of those amendments. Second, obviously the deadline of the end of session is critical. Not everything that people are talking about is going to get done. There's some other things the mayor and I don't totally agree on. But this one has a chance at the deadline. And finally, I would just say, obviously, there's a lot of politics, and obviously, but like this, you know, and I have a lot of respect for the mayor, but the trust is not about the mayor. The trust is about these residents here. And so we need our legislators to get past the kind of micro politics of who's winning and losing and see the big picture that we're out of time to make real progress on public housing.
Well said. Well said. Of course, Courtney. Where you been? I've been seeing you in a good little while.
Moving around. This is actually for Jessica.
Yes.
Just for those that haven't covered this before, can you just remind us exactly how this is turning NYCHA Section 9 into project-based Section 8, and how exactly that happens, and how residents will have veto power over whether their development should or should not enter the trust? Sure.
So I'll start with the technical piece. The creation of the Preservation Trust, it creates a nonprofit public benefit corporation that is public, where that will continue to own the properties, and that will allow HUD to provide what's called a tenant protection voucher to these units, which is a substantially higher income than what the current public housing revenue stream is. So it creates a new not-for-profit corporation that's wholly publicly controlled, that also creates a new income stream, and as well it comes with a set of procurement changes that allows NYCHA to spend the money more nimbly than it does currently. The second big issue with the Public Housing Trust has been creating this menu of options for people. So making sure that folks who want to go down a certain path are able to, and that is now encoded in the legislation itself. The tenants will be able, not just the TA presidents, but the tenants themselves will be able to take a vote and decide which type of program they would like to select in order to make their development and to improve their development.
Good stuff. And tenants, let me tell you something. We have to really give it up for Jessica.
Yes.
She is, she is so authentic about moving the needle. Her work, we're going to roll out our housing plan, but she is just unbelievable when it comes down to fighting on behalf and having the right plan for NYCHA residents. And so really appreciate you. One of the most important pieces of our amazing administration on how we move this leadership forward. Thank you so much for what you're doing. Now, traditionally, we have people, when I'm doing these off topics, you know, we have asked people to leave, but I don't want y'all to leave. I want my NYCHA folks to stay here just in case they get a little bit too rowdy. Y'all can get on them. You know, if they try to come at me hard, y'all can get on them. They got my back. So just hang right in here with me. Go ahead. Yes.
On topic. So there's been, decades of disinvestment in NYCHA. How are you going to ensure the money is there for the trust moving forward for years and decades to come?
And you're right. I use this analogy all the time. Imagine flying a plane and there's no cockpits to see how you're moving. We've been running this complicated piece of machinery called NYCHA in New York City without a cockpit. We don't have any dashboards. We don't know what we're doing. And people have benefited on the fact that we're not analyzing in real time what is happening in our city. So while we get the resources through this trust, we also have my CTO building out these dashboards so we can see what is happening in our cities. How long does it take to do a repair? Where's the money coming into NYCHA? Where's the contractors that we're using? How long the boilers have been online? We have to start analyzing this stuff in real time. And that is the difference. If you don't inspect, what you expect is suspect. That is what I've been saying over and over again. So we have to monitor those dollars when they come in. I think mismanagement, waste of money, and in some cases it may be even fraud. And we have to be able to identify that. Yes.
I'll also add that all the while for the last many decades that there's been such severe disinvestment in public housing, we've seen a very stable income stream for the Section 8 program. So that has been a very well-funded, stable process of funding through the federal government, and that's where this funding stream comes from. We also have the support of HUD for the trust, who's written a letter of support, and we had the regional HUD administrator, Alika Embry-Samuel, also in Albany with us, helping to fight for the trust. So we feel confident that there will be a much more substantial increase in resources that comes from this legislation.
All right, thanks a lot.
Yes.
Yeah. So how does this, or does it, unlock the $40 billion in federal funds? How do you access that? Will the trust work with that, or will it do that?
Right. So what happens is that the current income stream will be converted to Section 8 tenant protection vouchers, and that has a much higher income stream, which would allow the housing authority to receive debt. So NYCHA is the only property owner in the world that can't take on a mortgage to fund the repairs that they need, and this will allow them to do that.
All right, ready for off topic?
How are you, Marsha?
Good, how are you, Mr. Mayor?
Good to see you.
So I have two questions having to do with the latest subway shooting. Number one, the sister of the person who was killed was very angry and says that you should start doing your job to protect people. I wonder what your reaction to that was. But secondly, given the fact that it's 6 weeks from the Sunset Park incident, and there's another subway shooting, does it give more urgency to your desire to find new technology that will detect guns that are coming onto the subway system? Because that's the whole thing. You've got to keep the guns off.
First, let me respond to the family. Listen, there's nothing more horrific than losing a loved one to a violent act. You know, I've knocked on doors as a police officer, a sergeant, lieutenant, and I've had people, when I notified them that their loved ones were the victims of violence, I've had people curse at me, yell at me, scream at me, say, it's your fault if you would have done your job as a cop, as a sergeant, a lieutenant. I know that pain. That pain is real, and I've witnessed that pain throughout my career. It is my responsibility to keep New Yorkers safe. My heart goes out to that family. I am sorry that they lost their loved one. We have to continue to make sure that we are not losing loved ones. And no one knows that better than the residents here. Yeah. You know, the gun violence that's pervasive in our city, we need people on the side of the good people of this city. I keep saying that over and over again. We're doing everything for people who commit crimes. We need people on the side of the good people of the city, and that family is one of the good people of this city. And I spoke with the head of Goldman Sachs, David, yesterday, and gave him my condolences and to the Goldman Sachs family. And so I understand their pain, and I have to make sure the city is safe, and I want that obligation. I thank God I'm the mayor right now, and not those that don't understand the urgency of this moment.
The necessity to find some program to get the guns off the subway. I mean, you've been testing it at City Hall. Isn't it time to install it in the subway?
Yes, and that's so important what you said, what you stated, because I want to bring technology, not metal detectors, but technology that could identify a gun. And I want to bring that, move it around in the subway system so that we can identify guns. Now, what's interesting is that all those people who are complaining that I want to use technology to identify a gun, it appears as though that we're living in an alternate reality. I'm trying to figure out why are all the good people saying, Eric, do this, but the loudest that are living safe are saying, don't use technology, don't give police officers who are part of my anti-gun unit, who took 2,800 guns off the street. Everything that we're doing to stop the violence, there's this small number of well-oiled Twitter users that are attacking everything we do to keep our city safe. That's noise. We're gonna, as soon as we get the product at the level that we know it can do the job, because there's a lot of vendors we're looking at, we're gonna implement it. We're gonna implement it. No, we got to get it right. And I've said this over and over again. We have to get it right. It has to go through a testing period. It has to make sure it passes the constitutional muster. We have to make sure that it's right, because we don't want to put it out there and take it back. But one thing is for clear, I'm going to use the technology to keep New Yorkers safe.
Before you go to the train, before you go in the train, on the train, have something there to stop you from going on the train.
There you go. There you go. There you are. There you are.
So what about bad checks?
Hold on.
Just 1 second, I'll come back to you.
We'll come back to you, Julia. You know you and Marsha, how I feel about the two of you.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the emergency order on baby formula and the story in the Post about your potential run for president?
Okay, first let's deal with the baby formula, because me running for president is another baby idea that people keep playing with. You know, the baby formula. The Women's Caucus sent out a letter, and we're trying to find out. Number one, we're going out after price gougers. To identify, is there price gouging? I did this during the the start of COVID, when people were price gouging other items. We want to stop that, so we're going to send testers out there to make sure people are not price gouging. And then whatever we can do on the city level, we're going to sit down with our doulas and others to tell us what can we do on the city level, because it's a real crisis for mothers, and we want to make sure we're doing the right thing, and we have not figured that out on what we can do. The Women's Caucus called for us to implement some things. We want to sit down with the Women's Caucus and tell us how do we partner together, because it's not about pointing the finger, it's about lending a hand for these mothers that need the baby formula. I've said this over and over again about Eric is running for president. I've already was the president. I was the president of Brooklyn. You know, I've already endorsed Biden. Biden is my president, and I'm in support of Biden being my president. And lastly, listen, you could run the country from New York. New York is the place to be. I'm happy being mayor, getting crime under control, improving our schools, improving NYCHA, getting my economy back and up operating. I noticed, you know, you get a lot of clicks online when you keep writing the story about me doing things. Got it. So if people got to write those stories, I'm okay with that. Everybody has a job to do. I'm happy being in New York, doing my job here in New York, and I'm looking forward to doing it for the next 3 years and 6 months.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I
Yes,
want to
you will.
actually follow up on what this resident said.
Yes.
Would you consider reviving or bringing back bag checks at the subway? And also, people are describing what happened yesterday as like their worst nightmare on the subway. And how do you deal with that perception?
Yeah, no, and it is. It is the worst nightmare. I use the subways a lot. I'm in the system a lot. And it's unimaginable. You're sitting down, going to brunch, going to visit a family member. A person walks up to you and shoots you for no reason. Not a dispute, which is horrific to do it when it's a dispute, but that is the worst nightmare. And that is why I have been so dogmatic about, one, getting the illegal guns off the street, but then getting the shooters. You know, so once you take the gun off and the person who had the gun, you have to have that person who had the gun placed in jail, make sure he goes through or she goes through the criminal justice system. All of that has eroded. You know, it appears as though the citizens of New York and the police department, we're on one side and everyone else is on the other side. We need everyone to be on our side. Right, and the bag checks, we're already doing spot bag checks. We're trying now to negotiate with the Port Authority to allow us to place scanners at the bus terminals because many of these guns are coming from the south into our city. So we have to stop the flow of these guns. And so we're still doing spot bag checks, and we want to extend that to our Port Authority bus terminals because we think we could stop the flow or deter people from coming in bringing these guns. Especially in Georgia and in the South, they're coming up through I-95 right into our city.
Where are the spot checks taking place? The main.
They're random. We don't want to advertise where they are because then people will know I'm not going to this station, go to another, so they're random.
That's right. Yeah, Mr. Mayor, in that same vein, to clarify on your vision for the gun detection technology,
yes.
You know, there are thousands of entrances and exits in the subway system. Would that also be kind of a random procedure to put that device at random points of entry?
Yes, great question. Because what we're doing is, who's Rachel? Is Rachel here? Can you have somebody grab my glasses? You know, I want that Obama look, you know? You know? So what we're doing, that's why it's taking so long with these devices, because we want the mobile ones. We want to be able to just pop up at a station someplace, people don't know it's there, and be able to, as people go through, similar to what we do when we do car checkpoints. You know, so we're working on all the legality because in car checkpoints, if you try to go in a different direction when you're in that checkpoint, that's reasonable suspicion. And so our goal is to move it around, you know, outthink those who are, you know, have a criminal mind. And it's just a small number. That's what a lot of people don't realize. There's a small number of people who are violent in this city. The fact is that we are not putting them through the court system. We're not making sure they don't return back to our streets. So they're able to do violence over and over again. We zero in on those small number of people, you'll see a difference in crime in our city.
If I could follow up on a separate topic, a new report from New York Focus on the officers who took neighborhood safety team training found 13% have at least 5 complaints, 70% have at least 1 complaint. You said those officers would be squeaky clean, in your words. Looks like they aren't. Why is that?
Okay, now, see, there's a difference between complaints and substantiated actions. Hold on one moment. Let me transform myself. You know, trying to find that. So there's a difference between complaints and substantiated complaints. So let's drill into those complaints, because what I have noticed during my days of policing, that if an officer is someone that's committed to a facility or a house or block, and they are aggressively doing their job, not allowing tenants to be harassed, not allowing people to sell drugs on corners, so the bad guys have figured out, let's just call in a complaint on them. So if it's substantiated, that's one thing. If it's just a complaint, that's another thing.
Mayor, Mr. Enriquez, who was shot on the subway, seems like the type of person you were trying to get back on the subway and go back to work. And I'm wondering about your thoughts when you heard about it, but also, you've already put police in the subway. You're talking about gun technology. Like, are there any other changes that could come that could keep people safe as a result of the shooting? And then the second question is, were there supposed to be police on that car, or were there police on that subway car where Mr. Enriquez was shot?
No, there was not a police officer on that car, and we're going to look and see if one was assigned to that car, because we're looking at constantly evolving. And let's be clear, the goal is to make sure we have that omnipresent in our subway system. There's nothing more comforting than seeing that police officer on that platform, in the car, walking through the car, and that is what we are going to do, similar to what I did as a transit police officer. We need more visible presence of our police officers. The actions of, this is the type of employee I want to get back to work, yes. Does this send a chilling impact on that? Yes. I'm going to meet with all of my corporate leaders and tell them that, we need to forge ahead. We're going to do our job and continually transform how we're patrolling, identifying these problem spots, dealing with the housing issue, dealing with all the disorder that we are experiencing. But yes, the call is to come back to work, and the subway system being safe is a major driver to doing that. And when you have an incident like this, it sends a chilling impact. There's no getting around that. And we're going to make sure our subway system is safe in the process.
This coming as a direct result of this shooting?
I spoke with the police commissioner last night. We're going to be meeting this week to evaluate our deployment. I'm a big deployment person. We need to make sure we're deploying our personnel properly, and we're going to do an analysis to see where did we miss? What did we miss? It will become easier if we are able to use some of this technology that we're looking for, and to make sure that we zero in on those areas that we miss. And that's the goal, and we're going to continue. We're going to get it right. Now, shooters are decreasing. Murders are decreasing during the month of April compared to last year. The neighborhood safety teams are doing their job. We are going up against bad guys who have figured out the loopholes in systems, those who are unwilling to stop violence. They've made it clear by their actions that they're going to continue to be violent in our city, and they're going to attempt to hurt innocent New Yorkers. And we have to meet that challenge with the same level of determination that they are determined to hurt innocent New Yorkers.
Mr. Mayor, what more do we know about the shooter? And you said you spoke to your police commissioner last night. Have you talked this morning, or have you gotten any other updates?
I speak with the police commissioner or her team every morning. And we communicated. She had a conflict in her schedule today. We're going to be talking later on today. We communicated via text this morning, but we don't have any new updates on the shootings. We're looking at a few leads, and once we're able to release something, we're going to do that.
I think we gotta get on the subway and get back to the
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I want to make sure you win.
No, yes. Where is he? Can Bernard please come to the nightstand? I mean, to the microphone. You're in demand.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
are you